couple of facts before we proceed. The People's Assembly in Nottingham has been campaigning as part of the National Coalition for a number of years, first against the austerity programmes put in place by the coalition government, and even more so since the re-election of David Cameron's government, at least for the next few months, last year. We called a similar meeting to this, just days after the 2015 election. It was a much smaller room, and there were not as many people here as there were at that meeting, but it was very, very cramped indeed. And this is part of what we try to do as a movement in Nottingham, bringing people together, having as open a discussion as possible, sharing ideas and actually planning activity and action. And that's what this meeting is very much going to be about. The People's Assembly is not affiliated to any political party, although lots of people from lots of different political parties are involved in our campaigns and our key organisers. We're funded largely by voluntary donations, but also from support from trade unions. However, the vast bulk of our money does come from contributions and from aid given by our activists, so bear that in mind when thinking about any proposals for activity. The call went out for this meeting just over 24 hours ago now, I think, and it's been shared very, very widely. It's generated a lot of interest, and we put a call out for people to make possible suggestions about what we could do in response to the results emanating from Thursday's referendum. There were two sort of key things that were raised on that discussion, and I'm going to ask Stuart Halferty, who's the Secretary of Nottingham People's Assembly, just to introduce those and to give a bit more of an introduction about how we do things. Just one more note. I came in late, the chair's out. I tried to do it not in straight lines, but I am a maths teacher, so even though the chairs are at slight angles, they have ended up in straight lines. If people do want to shuffle round, please do so, but please try not to make it too chaotic, and at some point we'll come back for a discussion. We'll try and keep it as informal as possible, but to keep some sort of order, I'll sort of point and ask for contributions. When you do speak, please say your name. You can just use the first name when doing that, just so we've got the names of people's faces. Stuart.
So I'll try and take some notes of what happened at the meeting, mainly action points, so decisions that we made. And there's a sign-up sheet going around the room. Would someone mind holding it up, whoever's got it at the minute? There is at the back. If you can, as clearly as possible, put your email on that and your name. If I can't read your email, I can't email you in a minute when I'm done. But there are two proposals from people who couldn't make it tonight, and they've asked me to raise. One is that we organise, similar to what's happening in London on Tuesday night, a rally in the centre of Nottingham that says that EU migrant workers are welcome to stay, because I think that's going to be one of the key debates that people will start to raise very soon. And as you can imagine, anyone with an EU passport that's not British must be very, very frightened the minute the future holds for them. So that we propose doing on Tuesday from 5:30 to 7. This is all open for discussion, obviously, but that's one proposal that's been made. The other is that we start to raise money very quickly to begin putting adverts, like an open letter style in the press, saying the people of Nottingham didn't vote for a racist backlash against migrant workers, and we try and put the ideas that people have got into the local press, so that people who might not be on our Facebook networks can see alternative arguments. So those are the two sort of proposals that we've made.
Okay, we're now in the period now where we open up the floor for discussion, where people can make points and raise questions. People are inevitably going to want to have their say about what's happened over the past couple of days, but we please keep those sorts of comments short and sort of try and focus on positive action, positive activity that we can do emanating from this meeting. Just one more point before we do that. One of the immediate things I was worried about on Friday morning was that lots of things that are pre-planned that have already been put in the diary in terms of local radical political activity and trade union activity might get overlooked given the chaos that has now ensued. But two of those things, you will find information about them on your seats if you've got a seat, and there are additional leaflets here. One of them is a meeting called For a World Without War, which we'll hear from a response to the release of the Chilcot inquiry, which will be on the 6th of July, and also Bruce Kennedy putting the case for trial. We still desperately want to build that meeting, and I think we need to understand that whatever comes out of the Chilcot inquiry, which was the report onto the causes and consequences of the invasion of Iraq, will be another important political moment in this country. Secondly, there's a public meeting that's been organised by teacher trade unions and education trade unions on what is the future of education There's also information about that there. Lastly, on the 5th of July, the National Union of Teachers and for a separate industrial dispute, University College Union will be taking industrial action to defend the rights of teachers and actually to defend education more widely. Please look out for that information and share it along with everything else that we planned today. So, we'll open it up for contributions from the floor.
Hi,
Stand up and talk.
my name's Joe. I wanted to make one point, and something I've noticed recently is that I was two visuals last week, the Joe Cox visual and the Orlando visual, and there was people with similar ideas and similar goals and aims from lots of different factions, with Labour Party, Green Party, non-party, one of the millions of socialist parties. Can I make a point that one of the best things we can do now is all talk to each other? Trade unions speak to the Green Party, all the different socialist parties except for Labour speak to Labour Party people, because there is a massive problem with people in the left not talking to each other, and there's a very good chance that we're going to have to all fight a general election together as one thing in the next year, less than a year. So maybe one thing about this meeting is we could actually have some conversation, share Twitter, Facebook, email, come to those meetings, etc.
I can talk to you. Very cool.
Start the ball rolling. I think there's been a lot of comment, hasn't there? Because I think people are shell-shocked by what's happened. How could it possibly happen that basically a racist xenophobic campaign can actually win? And a lot of profiles about who voted for what. And I think overwhelmingly the consensus is that it's older people who voted to leave and it's young people who voted to remain. Which I think is worth bearing in mind, because it gives me a certain amount of hope, you know. Older people will sort of be thinking, well, it wasn't like this when I was young, and you know, things have got bad, there's more foreign people in this country, I don't know what's happening. Younger people are more open-minded, so I think we've got to latch onto that and have a very sort of young campaign and do all the things like Facebook and media, social media campaigning and so on, as well as being active, and I think that's really, really important. You know, petitions are all very well, but we want to be active and doing stuff and spreading the word, because I think we've got a hell of a job on.
Yeah, I'll follow on from Ivan. I mean, I think you know, who voted where. I think it's quite interesting. It's a lot of the working class areas in the north, around here, sadly, probably on a lot of the estates that voted to leave. But they're the same areas where it's been industrialised for the last 40 years, and their experience of the EU is not been very good for them, because all the industry's been drawn away. So I think, you know, they've looked to, you know, taken what the media's been saying all the time about immigrants and so on, but there's not been that united alternative, as the first speaker said, on the left as a poll, you know, like Bernie Sanders or someone like that, has managed to been able to do very well in the States. And yeah, we definitely need to come together, but I also think we need to be the polar alternative as people fighting austerity with, you know, Jeremy Corbyn standing up there, and I think that's very important to link the two. Because, you know, I don't think we should write all these people off as racist, and they're definitely not. But, you know, we've not been able to get our message through in the media at all from the left, whichever side we were on the referendum. It's just not carried. All you had was two sections of the ruling class bashing each other. And, you know, the debates have been absolutely terrible. And the really good way forward is coming together in activity. I think the thing on Tuesday is really good. I do think, you know, we need to broaden it out into austerity. And, you know, the fighting the cuts, the health service, I think, is probably one of the best issues to bring. You know, hoist Farage by his own card about, you know, all the money that's supposedly going into it.
One further comment I make about the referendum is its proximity to the mayoral election, and this feeds into our concerns about what could become a racist backlash from a number of different directions, and sort of feeds into why Tuesday is so important. I mean, people will have seen what was said by senior politicians, including our sort of Prime Minister and others, and also our future, possibly Prime Minister, during that mayoral campaign. It was one of the dirtiest, most racist campaigns to have been fought in British history, and they got away with it in terms of there were no consequences apart from losing. There were no consequences for them for that filth that they perpetuated. But the source of that racism was the official political parties, and it was the party of government. And to a certain extent, my concern is, yes, there was part of the reason why people will have voted to leave in this referendum campaign would be some form of xenophobia and racism. But that isn't automatically the sort of xenophobia and racism that's going to be out on the streets of Nottingham as it was a week or so ago and has been in the past. It's not the sort of racism that's going to necessarily automatically start cracking heads. But this is, the real powers that have a racist agenda at the minute are the government. Is the government of the day. And I think we need very sharply and very quickly to build a very big protest on Tuesday and to continue expanding and extending and solidifying our activist networks, because on top of everything else, we may well get George Osborne, although he may well be a spent force. He threatened before this referendum that he will have another emergency austerity budget, which will make the previous austerity budgets we've had look like a good week by the seaside. This will be a vicious and nasty emergency budget if he does indeed get to put it. So we, as Richard says, we do need to keep walking on both legs in terms of the People's Assembly campaign. But that's just to throw out sort of why I think Tuesday's protest is actually so very urgent. We're talking about racism deployed by the state. And just one last piece of evidence for this. I phoned the Evening Post on Thursday to get a story in about the teacher strike on the 5th. And the reporter who picked up the phone, I think it was fairly new, and just spoke at me for a long time because she'd just been covering a story about an immigration raid at Sharif's vegetable shop on the corner of Grovery Boulevard and Radford Road. 3 workers there were detained, 2 Pakistanis and also a young Palestinian man were detained, and who knows where they are now. I think we can expect to see more such incidents like that. They go on all the time and people don't hear about them, but I think they will become more high profile, and they will feed into the dangerous mix that we see around us.
Could we just ask for the contact details? Because it should be going, keep going around.
Do we know if the post is on our side, or are they trying to be neutral? Like, if we can get lots of stories out, are there any people here that work for the post? Okay, so it'd be good to have them on side, wouldn't it? And I'm wondering, are the key organisations here, as the Refugee Forum here, is anybody here from the New Art Exchange, the yeah, so they...
Sorry, someone from Refugee Forum, my partner was coming.
Okay.
She's cancelled last minute.
Okay.
I have direct contact. If you want to speak to them, I can give them contact.
I'm just wondering, to build momentum for lots of people to come here on Tuesday, it's really important that we work out who those key people are, who've got access to loads of people in the city. So it's worthwhile us all putting our names down and writing who we have access to. I'm part of the RSA, I run the First Tuesday Network, I want to run a ladies business network, I can put things in those places. So I suppose if we can have as many web links or something that we can share really quickly, that would be really helpful.
Do you indicate? Yep.
Yeah. I was going to say something kind of based on the previous one. But, we're talking a lot about how this was sort of a racist and xenophobic campaign. And a lot of the points they were making really were. But there's a problem, I think, with our language when we address these points, of the fact that when the word racist in itself now has become really a buzzword on our side that invokes an immediately defensive response from whoever we're having a discussion with. And as much as I believe many of the points they're making are racist points, as soon as I say, stop, that's not okay, you're being racist, whoever I'm talking to, it's going to shut down discussion and they're going to get on the defensive. When really, I think, we need to think about how they display our arguments as well. a better way to say it would be not what you're saying is racist, but maybe your beliefs may not discriminate against this set of people. Obviously, that's not as catchy of a thing that we can put on a sign or a slogan, but we need to be aware that the more nuanced your argument is, and the less, I don't know, short arguments aren't as strong. Yeah, I don't know, I'm rambling, but I think we need to be careful of the language we have.
In a way, you kind of said what I was thinking about saying. What we need to do is kind of drill down and try and understand what people are saying when they kind of hang their discontents and grievances on the hook of xenophobia and so on. The world is changing rapidly, isn't it? And some of us are kind of tuned in to that world. We talk about Facebook, we talk about social media, we try to get advances of higher education and so on and so forth. But there are a lot of people who feel left out, disconnected, and not tuned in to that world. How do you make sense of that? We can make sense in two easy ways. One is a lot of foreign people here now. My area has changed, and two, there's that thing called the European Commission, whatever it is. I don't think there's a kind of process of public education as referendum particularly, but these are hooks that people hang stuff on. You know, I'm really conscious that one of the things that we need to do to kind of think about the challenge to us, and I think there is a cultural divide actually between the activist left, who tend to be in the city, who tend to be cosmopolitan, who tend to be higher educated, and people who live outside. You know, we have our rallies at Brighton Club, but how often do we go to Kirk, or to Mansfield, or to Ashmore? It's brilliant to see students in higher education doing a whole stuff around, you know, a radical view of Remain. We could reclaim it as Remain, that's the idea. I didn't see any student activism in the FD college where I work, and most of the students we spoke to were very, very pro-Leave. There's a class difference, isn't there? And actually within the class, if you like, there's a difference. And my kind of appeal really is to start thinking about not just there is a real alliance of UKIP, Boris Johnson, the far right, and disaffected white working class communities. Now that could be a fragile alliance, or it could be a really toxic alliance. You know, something the 21st century post-fascism is kind of written into it. But I think we've got to think about not just, you know, the kind of easy slogans, easy campaigns that, you know, we feel comfortable with around right and so forth, but how are we going to communicate with those people that actually don't talk to them?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of come back to what you said. I think if we are going to do this on Tuesday, what I will do is I will go straight home, create a Facebook event using the Facebook page, and then email you all as soon as I can type up the 100 or so emails. And I would expect then that if we decide to do this, you might say, Stuart, it's too soon, let's do it on Thursday or Tuesday next week or whatever it has to be. We thought Tuesday because there's one in London on Tuesday. And while their publicity says, you know, London would remain, we obviously can't use that. I think the principle of bringing people together quickly, but we do, you know, it'll be pointless if there aren't groups of Polish workers there, groups of European workers there. It will be a pointless event if we can't do it by then. So I'm open to people having a discussion about the practicalities of doing an event within 3 days. Basically. I think Facebook makes it possible, and we have a very large email list, but practically,
I think we can do that. And I think it's also very important that we include not just those who sort of look different, but also those who, the Polish folks, the Lithuanians, the Latvians, the Romanians, and I have a bit of a worry to all of those. I think they're all related somehow, I don't know. But have a bit of a wire to all those communities. So as soon as you let me know the time and everything, I'll pass it on to them so that they can also show up. Because I think it's very, very important to include as many folks as I'll include myself as I'm with them too. So as many as we can.
I just want to pick up on some of the points that made. I think it's really important that we do actually challenge racism when we see it and stand in solidarity with people who are already experiencing a very real backlash. I've had people messaging me, phoning me in tears because of the hatred that they have received, because people view them as being different and no longer welcome here. So I think it's true, we cannot just say if you voted Leave you're a racist. That's not true. However, all the racists did vote Leave. So I think, yes, there is a difference, but we must always stand in solidarity against racism and oppression whenever we see it. I think it's really important that we go in, as was being said before, that we make connections with the people who are totally disaffected and disenfranchised. And I think there's a real danger that we can actually continue to perpetuate the reasons why people felt they wanted to vote Leave in the first place, because people aren't listening. Like the hardcore traditional Labour voters, they felt disconnected from their party. They felt that UKIP and UKIP's arguments and Farage with his pint and his cigar held the answers for them. And I think that we need to hear what they're saying, and as was being said, campaigns and things in the market square and stuff are really great, but they're not going to do any good unless the people who actually need change and need things to be different and need the anti-austerity agenda to be pushed are involved. And I think that we can make ourselves feel really good by having these meetings and having protests, but if those people who are actually living those lives that have been most affected by austerity and racism and the xenophobic agenda aren't involved, then nothing really is going to change and UKIP will continue to rise.
Judy, you were...
I'm in the report this morning I was in Equin, it's a tiny village. I work a lot in Nonsuch anti-trafficking. And it's classic what we've seen for decades, isn't it? Divide and rule. And if I'm talking, I talked to my son-in-law, the farmer, it's going to be massively affected. I talked to my daughter-in-law, she said her father voted to leave because the mines were all shut down. And it's a rural area and lots of police workers are coming in. And we have to connect with those arguments. And I absolutely stand there praising it every time because I've been there a long time. But if we go talking to those people and say you're a racist, we're actually shooting ourselves in the foot. And I think we should have something in Redford. Like, we should have something in the rural area. It's going to be smaller. But otherwise, the risk is that we have a great time and the Redford that's important. So I couldn't do that. I mean, we need to learn, because I'm in great grief about it. But we have to extend ourselves to those working class areas that have been so hit and divert that attention. So I think it's a good moment. If anyone saw for hours on the telly the other morning getting hammered about the lie about the NHS, then I think it's a critical moment that we have to turn that, because they have seen immediately that the campaign was standing on lie. So it might be small, it might not be so many people, we might have to repeat coaches. But I think we should look at those target areas outside the school.
I think Judy's made a very important point there about controversy. I think, saying very clearly who our enemies really are is an important thing for us to do in the next few weeks and going forward, because for too long I think our real enemies have got away with this. We haven't got a movement out there projecting those ideas and being clear about exactly what's going on. Andreas?
I think there's currently a scientific argument in when you think the Labour Party by some key politicians who argue, well, we are in favour of migration, but considering the general wider concern of the population as expressed in the referendum, we need to tackle migration through and therefore establish some kind of point system. I think that gives too much ground to those who are really on the kind of racist thing against any kind of migration. I think we also need to kind of find arguments against this kind of more subtle way of attacking migration, because I think that's going to become stronger and stronger as the next years.
I just wanted to re-answer that point and the next one made, how do we do it, So I'm thinking, yeah, we need to get out to those. Thank you. That we need to go out to those areas, like maybe, remember library vans? Yeah. Just some kind of van that we take, we share the maintenance of it, we share the drive, we go out to people so they know we're coming on a particular day. And so we can put a physical plan to engage with them.
rather than there's a lot of lovely rhetoric, and obviously of course we'll have to be careful about language and so on. But actually go where people are really cross, and I agree that it's really a class issue, and people are disassociated, and you know it's been coming for a long time. So I mean I think that's going to take quite a long time to respond to. I mean I agree with obviously doing what we can, but it's about building things up over time so our community does hear our side of the story. I just have a secondary point, I don't know if I missed it, but is there any news about this potential second EU referendum? You know, we've broken the system, all signed the petition. Sorry? So do we know how it may be responded to? Is there a likelihood it might happen?
I think there are a few other people who have, perhaps if you come back in a second on that, because go on.
Just what Lee saying, oh sorry. Because Stuart, you organise the events, you're organising that Nottingham Unites community event.
Yeah, I've got also for it, yeah.
Because that to me is the way, because we only ever really come together to do kind of placards and you know saying how we feel about the awful things that are happening in the world, and that's right, of course we need to do that, but unless we're going into those sorts of communities and like speaking to, like I come from Stapleford, but no one there knows we exist, you know, like unless we're going into those communities and doing things that are like nice, you know, like nice community activities, getting people kind of together and talking about those things, we're not going to get where we need to go, where everybody over there said, you know, we're not going to get to those places. And yeah, that's
I was just going to say about the racism point. It's like sort of a lot of people, they will say, I'm not racist. But what the other complainers do is driven fear into it. So they're now panicked, oh my gosh, there's so many people, and they don't understand. The media has been covered with lots of lies. And I just think, to say that they're racist, it makes them go that way, that you were saying, because they don't think they are. And what we have to do is work around it and find out, because essentially they are racist. What they're doing is being racist, but they don't feel they are. They feel that they're protecting their country. And it's their fear that's
Okay, sounds got a test line involved.
Hi, Stu. Just sort of following up on what you were saying regarding sort of this whole thing with taking a petition and whatever. What I'm trying to understand, so I'm not, this is my first time here, if there is a willingness on the left to have, is there a willingness for the goal to be for Article 50 not to be invoked, to actually try and put a movement through, to actually have a real groundswell nationally to stop that being the case? Because obviously Karen's kicked it into the long grass and said, well, that's a decision for invoking Article 50, that's a decision for whoever comes after me as a Prime Minister. Is there a willingness to try and stop Article 50 being invoked? Because we all know, I hope, that a referendum isn't a legally binding thing, although they have said they will follow it. So I'm interested in what the willingness is there. I think it's all very nice to say, oh, you know, we need to come back X, Y, Z. I think it's very important to be specific. What is our goal? What are we trying to achieve?
It might be worth adding at this point that there are people assembly as such has took no line on.
What I'm saying is there a willingness on the left too.
There are people in the room who I know voted differently from me, so
yeah.
I think if we open that discussion now, I see what you're saying, but
yeah.
that might be something that we come back to actually as and when those issues come up. Three more speakers.
Yeah, so you might be I've been a news agent and I've had a lot of conversations with customers the last couple of days. And to be honest, it was mostly the working class people who were voting to leave. And I had a conversation with the man this morning and he said, I'm not a racist, I just want a job. And he knows there's a construction company locally. He said the boss there, he brings in Polish workers because they would take less money. I said, well, he's a legal employer then, it's him who should be hating. But he couldn't see it. All he saw was he wanted a job and all these Polish guys have jobs. And he hasn't. And he said, I'm not a racist. And I found it really hard to argue with that as a point, because all he wants is a level playing field. So, you know, it's hard to answer things like that. You can't explain everybody wants to do.
Can I, sorry, to get on back of that, is the lady was saying at the back about people being labelled as racist. We really need to get the language right, because this is going to be a media war, basically. That's why we have the vote on Thursday. That's why the vote came out the way it came, because you throw enough money at an idea and people buy into it. And we need to start thinking about a comparison to the polarisation in 1930s Germany and their economic downturns that nationalised their country. 92% of people in the UK are still white, and talking about racism isn't going to resonate with most of those people. They're going to be like, yeah, racism is something for someone else who's not me. We need to talk about nationalism, fascism. My mum is 66 and certainly isn't racist, but absolutely believes that indigenous British people built Britain and people who are born here have a right to benefit from that. I completely disagree with her and say it's a sheer fluke that we were born in this family. And I think that is a major area that you need to educate people on. That this is an issue about fascism and globalisation and working class people, perhaps lower socioeconomically educated people, not seeing that they're buying into that nationalist idealism and they're being strong armed by the media. Okay.
Firstly, place what everyone else said already, I've heard a lot of people saying kind of they weren't voting for the race whether they just wanted any change, whatever it was. We kind of talked about Tuesday, and I think that's going to be really important thing, really awesome. I'm just wondering the dimension of possibility of another general election and what can people see our role in bringing that out so that we can kind of navigate where things go from here. Don't we have any suggestions about it?
Just following on from the lady's point here and what some other people said as well. I think actually it's working class people who vote to leave, and I'm not bothered whether people vote to leave, but the reasons that they vote to leave, and we know that's to do with xenophobia and racism. And you're right, people just want a job, but want fair wages and want to be treated fairly. I'm not sure how we tap into those people. It's quite easy, I come from Stented. I've got very proud of how I work in that group. And most of my family and friends are in low-paid jobs, they're in insecure jobs, they're unemployed long-term, they desperately want a job. They go to a factory and they see that the factory is populated by Eastern European people. But my friends don't have any issue with Eastern European people. What they've got an issue with is not having a job. Nigel Farage is telling them that they haven't got a job because these Eastern European people have got their job. Eastern European people, the employer wants people that they can exploit. That's how they manage to get a job. I think the difficulty for us is informing those people, my people, that they're the ones who are being exploited and lied to, and it's what's caused them to leave. I think it's black people as well. Black people, Asian people, and I tell you, a lot of young people vote to leave as well for the reasons that I've just said.
I think that what people voted against was austerity as much as immigration. I think that people were just told that what was causing all the problems that they had was immigration, when in reality it is austerity. And I think that we should have focused on that more as the Labour Remain campaign or the Left Remain campaign. But that's the beauty of hindsight, I suppose. And I wanted to make a point about racism. I don't for a minute think that everyone who voted Leave is a racist, but the Vote Leave campaign did deal with racist politics. And we have to accept that, and we have to listen to black and minority ethnic voices on this, because it's us who are experiencing the backlash of that directly. And I think it's for us to say whether we feel that we've been treated in a racist way, not branding people as racist, but yeah, I think that's it.
Yes.
For me, it's just echoing. I think it's just so really important because the first step for me is really to give a resounding positive support for the people who are residing in this country that are from Europe and international cities as well, because it's not just backlash now going to be against people who come from European countries. I think it's just going to be a lot bigger than that and a lot more dangerous than that potentially. And I do think it is about going out to other places as well. You don't need to go very far. Go up to Arnold and talk to people, and you'll see that there's a huge feeling of people that cause them to vote Leave. I actually believe that in terms of the second referendum, I think really, as was just said, the campaign was about lies and deception and deceiving people into voting and coercing people into voting in a way, and they were not in possession of the facts. So I think it's personally more a discussion about whether we're putting out another petition to say, to invoke that, we would say that was wrong because it was founded on lies and people were deceived. And so the vote is invalid, completely invalid in my opinion.
Let's say that as far as vote referendum, it's about retroactively addressing something that's already happened. However, we can demand a referendum on the terms of the exit deal that's negotiated, and we can reject that. And we can keep them at that table. It's not, they can't force us out. We can demand that referendum. So.
I'm going to mirror that exactly. I think any notion, at least for a decade, 15 years, of actually having a genuine conversation about trying to rejoin the EU or anything along those lines is foolish. And it's a complete waste of time because working class people feel completely vindicated at this point in time in particular. And so telling them, no, you got it wrong, obviously I don't think they did, is not the way of going about it. And I think, going back to the point that was raised, it was general about the idea of a general election coming up, is that I think there is big potential to force it, to make it politically unsustainable. The Tories might make it unsustainable for themselves to go without an election. I think there needs to be a massive discussion about having one focal point, as we alluded to, about where people can go to. I mean, Paul Mason has put out the idea about Labour, Greens, Plaid, the SNP, trying to take some kind of electoral alliance with each other, to try and take the Brexit negotiations away from the Conservatives in a hypothetical vote. I feel like that is something that potentially needs to be broken immediately, to talk in all the different local areas about, Green, it's more relevant in this part of the world than Greens and Labour, rather than the SNP, honestly. To try and create non-aggression pacts and actually stand to have one candidate, one anti-Tory, one UKIP, anti-Tory, anti-UKIP position in ongoing elections that might happen. Because otherwise I think the left is going to divide and conquer itself and not have that one voice of we don't accept this anymore.
I think there are three very brief things on that. First, sorry, can you stand back? No, I'll sit down. You can hear me, I'm very loud. I think there are three things that I want to say very briefly. Firstly, I agree completely with the concept that you've got to work together as opposed to separately, as John said at the very beginning. Secondly, the analysis that you gave about the past has to be remembered. The left never organised effectively in the past to stand up to the racists that have been let out of the can by the current right-wing politicians. If you don't organise for the effective backlash that's going to come from the thugs of the right, history will simply repeat itself and you will learn nothing. And I think that's really important to take that on board.
Barbara, I think that I really hear what everyone's saying in this respect, quite easy, but I think in my head when I read, I know it's going to be overly complicated again. I'm going to overcomplicate everything again because I think we have a class of
complicated school system that enforces these things and then being so deeply in society. We have institutions that see and other, and then we have lots of terms like austerity and stuff like that. I think it's a quite ideological term that just sort of buys into what capitalism is about, and I think that needs to be quite a strong sense, like a stance that needs to be an anti-capitalist stance in these movements, and it needs to not dangerously move into it being too political again, and disengage a lot more people. It needs to be about empathy, it needs to be about like reaching out and like strengthening things rather than diving into the political toxic thing.
Okay, we have 15 minutes. I'm going to take a smattering of speakers, then we'll come back for a bit more of a focused organisational thing. So
we've talked about this demo we want to do. I think that's a good thing to do in the sort of immediate term to show that we support migrants. I think we should make it not just EU workers. I think that's what it was said before. I think it should be all migrants, whether they're EU, non-EU, legal, undocumented. I think we need to say that everyone is welcome, really. People have also mentioned the probability of more immigration raids, and I think that is a big fear that we need to try and organise against. I think in London there's been some activism, sort of anti-raid activism. I think we should look into if we can do some more, sort of organise more of that going on and trying to block state racism when it tries to deport people. And with the economic impact of Brexit and the continued austerity, we do need to go to the most deprived communities and try to help them out, and the people who are most impacted by what happens. And maybe if you can see that the same people are trying to help out migrants who are getting affected and people who are being affected in other ways, and maybe that will help to them to see that it's more who the real enemy is and to try and work together more.
very, very brief points from the three of you, and then we'll move on to the last bit. Peter, if we have a demonstration on Tuesday, I think we probably are, there is a People's Assembly organising meeting booked in for that evening, and details of that will go out. So we've got a few more days to think on these things. And all the suggestions that have been made that will require money. I mean, last year before the general election, the People's Assembly put out a newspaper. It was a 12-page broadsheet called the Nottingham We Deserve, which had local writers and which was distributed. 10,000 copies were distributed around the city. A brilliant idea for a van or transport of some description, and Stuart's looking that down. I don't know what's going on, but I will call him back in a minute. But the bottom line is, right, if it's politically important, it's going to cost us money. So I'm saying that before Stuart repeats it several times now. You might tell us what they probably shouldn't.
Yes, where's the list now? Can everyone make sure their name is... So look, just ask Edward who runs the venue to get us down here. Does anyone got hats? I'm going to send around... Yeah, I mean, I will do that the moment I get home. And email it round to everyone. But at the minute, just if we can think of the next nomination. Yeah.
Okay. We are sort of going to end the meeting now. We've got the room for about another 5-10 minutes. If people do want to continue and hang around and chat for a bit, do so. It would be wonderful to go back with the fold-up chairs and fold up them and put them at the front here. But you know, it's vital within the next couple of hours, because Stuart's not going to the cardboard shopping like the rest of us. He's going home to set up the social media aspects of the sort of things we've discussed here tonight. Please get sharing, please get inviting, and I'll bring Stuart back on the floor.
Just quickly, I mean, look, I understand that people have got a lot that they want to talk about. It's been very general today. We said almost nothing practical about the event on Tuesday, but I think we are committed to doing it. Is that the consensus in the room?
Yeah.
So I'm relying on you all to use your organisational skills and the networks that you've got autonomously without being sort of instructed from the centre. Just we need to get 1,000 people out within 48 hours, and that's that's a tall demand. But it's not the case of if we get 155 or 200, it will be a physical measure of how strongly people feel about this. So, I mean, I'll endeavour to have a Facebook event set up within about an hour and a half or 2 hours. But after that, I mean, I'm out all day tomorrow, so I'm reliant on you guys to try and spread this. There's probably not time to design a flyer, and I think we can make that clear to people. It's not going to be as organised as it could be. But just one practical thing really is that, for the next 2 years, everything that we take for granted will be up for negotiation. The right to strike, we don't possess that in England. That's a European rule. Maternity leave. Someone made the point to me, Edward, who runs the venue, that we have to renegotiate all of the EU funding for the arts. So whatever job that you're in, if it's anything to do with the university or higher education or schools or the public sector, it's all up for grabs. All up for grabs. And in the next 2 years, the right wing in this country are going to have a field day, an absolute field day. So it is an awful lot of work that we're sort of committing to. I mean, this is huge. This is the big, this is as big as any event that's taken place in my lifetime, and the lifetime, I'm sure, of almost anybody in this room. You need to bear that in mind. And just in terms of this racism argument, there have been Irish immigrants coming to this country for hundreds of years, and wages have consistently risen in this country during that time because we had trade unions that were capable of pushing wages up. And what we don't have them in our trade unions, and that's a large part of the problem. And I think where we might end up is in that sort of instrumental racism, where people say, if I kick the Poles out, I get their jobs. And the last time we had that sort of instrumental racism was Germany in the 1930s, when Hitler said, we kick the Jews out, take their shops, kick them out of their jobs, and you get their jobs. And people bought into that, and we could so easily have that situation open up in Britain, and all of the work that anti-racists have done in the last 30 or 40 years could be undone in the space of 2 years. So people need to take quite seriously what's about to happen, what could potentially happen. So I'm going to write up the minutes as carefully as I can. I'm going to email out to everybody at some point tonight, and then from tomorrow onwards, if you can just, using the Facebook event and any networks you've got, share it widely. Yeah, 5:30 p.m. at the Brian Club. In fact, we should use the front of the country. Oh no, we've got that European market. Well, that would be a problem.
Oh no.
So 5:30 until 7 p.m.
What are we doing? Because if we're just milling around, it's a bit shit.
Well, I think
Will we hold hands, or I don't know.
I think what we have is a PA system. So if you know somebody who represents a community in Nottingham, just say you're invited to speak. So invite people to speak. Invite just anybody in this room is now licensed to say they're an organiser of the event on Tuesday. If we need someone else to speak, tell them they can speak. And if we can't, we'll find some way of incorporating others. So we'll have a PA system. The next thing that I'll do is send out a press release to all of the local press, and ITV, BBC, Nottingham Post, and we'll make it our first sort of press event. And it could be that if we get our act together, we launch some sort of Nottingham campaign on the day. But look, the number one thing really is that we've done this before, basically. So maybe skip the organisation a bit because we know what we're doing. But we will have, a level of organisation in place already. So you just need to sort of provide the people, and any organisation you think of to invite, just invite them.
We also want
at 5:30 until 7 p.m. on Tuesday the
28th. It is 28th.
5:30 till 7 p.m, culminating around 6 p.m, so that gives people time to get from work, doesn't it? So, by 7 p.m, people should be able to make it there.
And is it important that we invite people who also vote into the
Yes, absolutely. Everybody.
Exactly.
There's lots of people who are willing to leave but don't want to raise backlash.
Yeah.
So invite everybody. So we're not going to talk about how people voted anymore. We don't care about that's done. We're just going to invite people who don't want to raise backlash.
Can I just say, could you get focusing on not TV, the media in the first instance, because they quite often do packages for the BBC. And somebody, Sharon Harlier at Knox TV, worked for the refugee forums. She's like,
do you know her?
Sharon? Yes,
I know Sharon.
Did you call Sharon?
Yeah.
She's in Wales this weekend.
Two last things. Placards and banners, homemade, whatever. We need lots of visual aids, I guess, for if you call it that, for Tuesday. And the other thing is that I think we should congratulate ourselves actually on being here. If you do have further questions or anything, message, Facebook, email us. We can conduct discussions on the Nottingham People's Assembly Facebook page. Engage, get other people engaged, but make sure you come on Tuesday. And as Stuart said, everybody in this room is an organiser of that meeting, so go away and organise, I guess.
And can we have some money off?
Money. Also take leaflets for other events.